Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post. Corrupt nonprofits are in panic mode, and here's why. From Truth Out, DOGE aims to embed agents in all nonprofits that receive federal funds. So if the federal government is going to hand you a little money, a lot of money, they're going to reserve the right, they want to reserve the right, to be able to investigate where that money went and what you're doing with it and how you're operating. With DOGE. From the Washington Post, DOGE sought to assign a team to an independent nonprofit group. They're very independent, but of course they take money from the federal government to operate. Not that independent when you really get down to it. A representative of DOGE met with the leaders of the Vera Institute of Justice, a nonprofit organization that advocates for lower incarceration rates. They also have a separate division where they promote immigration and provide lawyers for illegal immigrants. And yes, we've been paying for this and a lot more. But DOGE could really make a difference here. They're very upset. Quote, "We can only surmise that these tactics seek to silence us," said one nonprofit that's been targeted by Trump. They targeted them and gave them all of this money. That's such a target. If we stop funding our enemies, they will all disappear. The Vera Institute of Justice, a nonprofit dedicated to reform of the criminal legal system, has revealed that Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency recently attempted to embed staff within the organization, citing Vera's prior receipt of federal funds. According to DOGE officials, this was part of a broader plan to install government teams inside all nonprofits that receive federal funding. And doing that is incredible. It is a huge undertaking. It's massive. So I don't know what implementation plan they have, but when they say they're looking to do it, these are really smart guys. They figured out how they're going to do it. Maybe they're going to go there once or twice and put in software and have the software monitor what they're doing. I don't know. But I absolutely love the idea. Quote, "The attempted intrusion by DOGE, a temporary, unelected, and non-congressionally approved agency toward the Vera Institute, should alarm every American," according to Diane Yentl, president of the National Council of Nonprofits, who said this in a statement. Of course, DOGE just took over Obama's old tech support organization. It's completely congressionally approved, and it may just be that Diane is not up on the latest news. During a call with DOGE representatives, Vera's legal team challenged the legitimacy of the request, noting that the Department of Justice had already terminated the nonprofit's federal grants, which had totaled approximately $5 million over 3 years. $5 million so they could fight for more criminal justice reform, which is not keeping people in jail who commit crimes. Got it. While the Vera Institute successfully pushed back and DOGE ultimately withdrew the request, civil society advocates warn that the incident is part of a broader campaign to undermine nonprofit independence. Keep in mind, this organization, while it's a nonprofit, is a legal nonprofit, so it's like they're all lawyers over there. They should have been able to figure out how to block this. If it wasn't part of the terms of the grant that they received originally, and the money has already been canceled, and it's past any statutory review period, unless they have specific cause to review the money, okay, I can see how they were able to get away from this. But what are you going to do, nonprofits, when DOGE is worked into all of your future contracts and all of your future grants so that you can't get money unless you agreed to during and after action results for being investigated by DOGE? So the federal government can look and see exactly what you've been doing with the money. That's going to be a problem. And I'm not inside DOGE or the federal government, but I can tell you this much. These guys completely understand this, and the DOGE people are going to tie this up in future contracts and future grants. Quote, "This action by DOGE sets a dangerous precedent, leaving any recipient of federal funding, nonprofit, for-profit, and individuals alike, vulnerable to the whims of this destructive group. DOGE and the Trump administration's professed commitment to free speech and financial efficacy falls flat when their actions selectively target and weaken groups whose missions they may oppose," according to Yentl. I mean, if you're going to get money from the federal government, then you ought to be subject to the federal government saying, hey, what exactly did you do with that money? If you advocated for your cause and everything you did with the money was appropriate, okay. But if you're going to give $2 billion to a group closely tied to Stacey Abrams, that might be a problem. And that case with Stacey Abrams is still tied up in the courts. The judge recently said that that money can go to Stacey Abrams and to other people pulling the same kind of crazy climate shenanigans, but an appeals court in DC did stop the money from going out. We'll see what develops, but I don't think they're going to have the same kind of opportunity, let's say, to get grants without accountability that they used to have before the Doge team came around. This tactic to control nonprofits could have far reaching consequences. An Urban Institute analysis found that more than 103,000 nonprofit organizations received a combined $267 billion in government grants in 2021. You know that number is only higher right now. These figures, based on IRS filings, excluded smaller organizations with limited reporting requirements, highlighting the vast scale of the nonprofit sector's entanglement with public funding. Quote, the end goal is to destroy all of civil society. NGOs include everything from community clinics to civil rights organizations. It means the end of the ACLU, NAACP, and all advocacy organizations, according to Harvard cyber law instructor Alejandra Caraballo, who wrote this on Blue Sky in February. Blue Sky is X for crazy people. Quote, Elon is seeking to eliminate any and all independent sources of power outside of an authoritarian government he controls. Sure, why not? This is just the latest in a growing series of attacks by the Trump administration aimed at exerting control over the nonprofit sector. In one of its most dramatic moves, DOGE assumed control of the U.S. Institute of Peace, an independent nonprofit created by Congress in 1984, whose board was replaced and leadership fired. After the board was replaced, they installed loyalists and they transferred ownership of its headquarters, the actual physical building, to the federal government. Of course, they've been receiving millions and millions of dollars for years and years and years from Congress, doing the same kinds of things that USAID did, just in a different building with a different group of people. DOGE officials reportedly referenced this takeover in their conversations with Vera, citing USIP as an example of a successful federal intervention into nonprofit affairs. And they're absolutely right, that was a legal precedent, and it was a separate nonprofit organization. It wasn't a federal organization as USIP. I think the issue would tie into exactly how much of their funding was actually coming from the federal government or not. Can the organization exist if it doesn't receive money from the federal funding? I'm sure it gets quite complicated, but they're going in the right direction. They should take on all of these NGOs, especially ones that do have shady reputations, and I don't know which ones those are. I don't even know if this one has a shitty reputation. I'm sure there's a reason why they had their contracts canceled and their grants canceled from the Department of Justice, but clearly DOGE is starting to take on NGOs. Of course, you can call it a non-governmental organization, but when it's funded completely by the government, what exactly is that then? They're independent, they're a nonprofit, okay, they are all of those things, but really if you don't exist except for the federal government, then the federal government should be able to look at every penny that you spend and exactly what you're advocating for to make sure you are staying within the limitations of being a nonprofit, and there are legal limitations that you have to maintain if you're going to be a legal nonprofit, and there are usually some conditions tied to the grant money you're getting. Yeah, let DOGE investigate all of these guys. Elon Musk has repeatedly publicly accused nonprofit organizations receiving government contracts of widespread fraud, asserting without evidence that he has not shown yet publicly that leaders of these fake NGOs should face imprisonment. Of course, he's seen the details and he's seen the numbers, and he hasn't been sued for saying this yet. And if you're saying something that's defamatory, usually you get at least some threat from a law office. I'd like to see what happens, but I haven't seen him disproven yet. In a post on X last month, Musk claimed, quote, the Democrat-funded NGO scam might be the biggest theft of taxpayer money ever. One of the things that Musk has pointed out and he discovered through DOGE, he has said that people's spouses, people's relatives are taking money from the federal government in creative ways. Some of them have an NGO, and they get this couple of $1 million or whatever amount of money to their spouse's nonprofit. Other people own buildings and lease them at very high rates to the federal government that the federal government in many cases doesn't even use. Whether it's a relative or a spouse, essentially taking advantage of the federal government and the American people. Comments from Musk seem to support that targeting the Vera Institute is part of a broader effort to delegitimize civil society by portraying nonprofits as threats to government authority, a hallmark of authoritarian regimes. Now, no one's saying that it's a threat to government's authority. They're just saying that you guys are stealing the money. No doubt there are some subversive elements that are being funded through nonprofits, but that isn't even the point. The point is, If some of the funding is going to nonprofits that are doing things that are not legitimate, of course the funding should stop. A Princeton professor and board chair of the Vera Institute of Justice warned on LinkedIn that Trump's executive order empowering DOGE to target waste, fraud, and abuse is merely a pretext for what amounts to a federal takeover of nonprofit organizations. Trump put out an executive order back in February telling DOGE to go look for waste, fraud, and abuse wherever federal money has been spent, essentially. And that's all DOGE is doing. Quote, fascists need to crush civil society organizations because they're a bulwark of liberalism. They democratize access to power and institutions while defending civil liberties, according to Caraballo on Blue Sky. Advocates like Caraballo are especially alarmed by the Trump administration's mounting pressure on private universities, including Harvard, Princeton, Columbia, University of Pennsylvania, Cornell, Northwestern, and Brown, all of which are 501c3 organizations. At least they are for now. They're nonprofits. We'll see how that goes a few days or a few weeks from now. The Trump administration has frozen billions in funding to these institutions, demanding the elimination of DEI initiatives, imposing hiring and curriculum oversight, and pressuring universities to collaborate more closely with law enforcement and immigration authorities. Advocates say the Trump administration is using these institutions as a testing ground before expanding its attacks to all nonprofit organizations. Quote, Trump has to crush Harvard and all other civil society institutions to consolidate power, according to Caraballo. Harvard has $53.2 billion of its own money. It doesn't need the money from the federal government. It wants the money from the federal government, but it doesn't actually need the money from the federal government to operate. Harvard has refused to comply with Trump's demands. In a recent statement, the university's president declared that, quote, the university will not surrender its independence or relinquish its constitutional rights. In response, Trump threatened to revoke its tax-exempt status, which Caraballo says will be used as a tactic against nonprofit organizations next. They previously warned that the Trump administration will likely attempt to, quote, gut the entire nonprofit sector by using investigations into DEI, anti-Semitism, or gender ideology as a pretext to revoke the tax-exempt status of organizations that challenge Trump. Well, whatever works, let's shut these things down. Quote, this administration has systemically attacked every aspect of civil society, from academia to law firms and the media, and is now coming after the nonprofit sector. You also forgot the judiciary. There's a lot that's been going down with judges, even the Supreme Court recently. Trump is pushing all of these guys to the limit, and the reason he's doing this is to create change. Of course, he's doing it with trade as well. With the judiciary, we're going to see a lot more of this. They're all overextending themselves, these nationwide injunctions. Just recently, the Supreme Court put an order out somewhere it didn't even have jurisdiction over whether or not the president could use the Alien Enemies Act. That one gets complicated, but suffice it to say, the Supreme Court is even over its skis. The idea is Trump will rely on his constitutional power because he was elected the executive, the president of the United States, to exercise that constitutional power on behalf of all the citizens. He is us. He is the person who we elected him to be. We want change. We want change in trade. We want change in the universities. We don't want DEI. We don't want discrimination. We don't want nonprofits getting millions of dollars, using them for crazy causes or for causes that weren't even part of what the grant was. And we certainly don't want people taking millions of dollars out of these nonprofit organizations and putting it in their pockets either. We need a lot of change, and it does create chaos, but it's in that chaos that you can create the change, if you're the one that's creating the chaos. If you want to know about creating change and how Trump is operating within chaos successfully and how he always seems to not be afraid to flip tables over and get things done, look up a fighter pilot named John Boyd, B-O-Y-D, and you'll get a deep insight into what's going on in the United States. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.